When I wake up in the morning, I have a little bit of a pit in my stomach, kind of like I do right now, and a chip on my shoulder, which I don't right now, because I know that I have to figure out how to compete. I have to take my team into the field to compete against the big box retailers. Home Depot and Lowe's, Walmart and Target. A lot of you face some of the same competitors, including Costco, NTB, and then there's that darn Amazon.com. Last year, 1 in 3 purchases online were made at Amazon.com. Tens of millions of people have an Amazon Prime account, maybe some of you in this room. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but when I wake up in the morning, I have to figure out how I'm going to convince people to walk through my front door when they've already paid a business to shop with them. Think about that. You've paid Amazon through your Amazon Prime account to only shop at Amazon, but darn it, I want them to come to my hardware store. And I know that you face some of those challenges as well. I know what we have to compete, though, is the experience and the service, and hopefully that's not changing. And you heard a little bit about the fact that the hardware industry's gone through a lot of the same changes that you all are going through, and we figured out that we can compete by being friends, by being local, by that high-touch service that we can provide. So just real quick, just a quick quiz. Show of hands if you buy a 30-day air conditioning filter and you change your air filter every 30 days. Oh, not a lot of hands. Raise your hands if you change your air filter. You buy a 90-day air filter and you change your air filter every 90 days. Okay, not a lot of hands. Okay, in the corner after my presentation, I'm going to host a little DIY clinic, and we'll talk about air filters and flappers and nuts and bolts and a whole host of other things that I carry in my hardware stores. I've earned that right, if you want to call it a right, by operating brick-and-mortar high-touch locations. I operate those locations within the Ace Hardware Co-op. Ace is the largest independent hardware retailer in the country. Actually, I would probably argue we're the largest independent hardware dealer, member dealer in the world. And I'm going to talk more about Ace in a minute, but what I've learned through my affiliation with Ace is not a secret. I'm not the world's best retailer. My team would tell you that's for sure. But it's a system, and I've learned how to use the system to my advantage, and I've learned how to work within it and help it grow, which has made a really big impact on how we've gotten bigger over the years, which haven't been that many years, I guess. I opened my first Ace Hardware store in Washington, D.C. in 2003. In 2002, I was about ready to get laid off from my job. I have a really good friend who likes to say I have layoff radar. I had been laid off 2 or 3 times in as many years, and it was about to happen again. So again, I found myself in a position of needing to figure out how to make some money, how I was going to take care of the house that I lived in, how I was going to make my husband happy. But it was 2003, and I had hitched my star to someone else's wagon. The wagon was crashing. You know that time. It was the mid to late 90s. Everybody was giving technology companies money hand over fist. VC and angel investors were basically throwing money at anybody who had what seemed like a good idea to create a technology company. And I kept going to work for those guys, and they kept going out of business. In the mid-1990s, Washington, although it's really expensive now, was starting to get expensive then. People were being driven east in search of cheaper housing, and they were running smack dab into this amazing old neighborhood called Logan Circle with an abandoned retail and commercial strip that just had tons and tons of potential. Our neighbors were buying houses with boarded up windows. There were empty lots everywhere. Literally every other house that's now worth a ridiculous amount of money was boarded up. My husband and I used to joke, we bought a place in that neighborhood, that we used to joke that we lived in the dark, our pictures were on the ground, and our toilet was always running. Because we were too lazy to walk it was a mile or so round trip to get to the closest True Value store to buy picture hangers, light bulbs, and a flapper. We'll talk about those in our DIY clinic too. So, I came home from work, I was super excited. I said, I figured it out, I know exactly what I'm going to do. And Mark said, what? And I said, I'm not going to commute anymore. I apologize, I know you sell tires. I had a lousy commute, and I didn't want to do it. So I said, I'm not going to, and Mark said, great, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm not going to work for a guy anymore. No offense, I know there's a lot of men in the room. I was responsible for telling 200 investors that the man who ran our company had squandered all the money. It was a very ugly situation. I had to call them and personally tell them that all of their investment money was gone. I held it all against him. Mark said, great, honey, but what are you going to do to make money? And I said, I'm going to open a hardware store. And like a very good husband, he didn't say a word. Appropriate laughter, thank you very much. So I was going to fix up my condo, I was going to fix up my neighbors' houses, and I was going to fix up that entire neighborhood by opening a hardware store. I was convinced that I could do it. Fast forward 14 years, we operate 11 Ace hardware stores in Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Maryland, Tacoma Park, Maryland, and Alexandria, Virginia. I always distinguish those locations geographically that way because I want them to feel independent. I want them to feel like they are the fabric of their community. We name all of our stores after the neighborhood that they're in, and we'll continue to do so. One of my favorite quotes is, "You're not a clone, why shop at one?" And that's how we try to grow our business. Mark joined me in that business about 3 months in. My husband is much more conservative and risk adverse than I am. And he thought he would keep his job in case I couldn't afford to pay the rent on that first space, which was a joke because he wasn't making nearly that much money. But he joined me 3 months in. He came home from work one day and he said, "I'm going to quit tomorrow. And don't tell him I told you this." I could make fun of my husband, but I should probably stop at some point with the story. But he came home one night and he said, "I'm going to quit tomorrow. You are having way too much fun." And I was like, there is no way you're going to quit your job. And he drank about 14 beers. Yes. And he woke up the next morning and I said, "Honey, do you remember what you said last night?" And he said, "I'm going to quit, I promise." And by noon he called me and he had quit his job, which is great. So we've been in this partnership ever since, and we still love each other and we still get along and we still plan on growing.